So hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline Taylor. I'm a senior lecturer in research practice, and I'm going to be speaking with my colleagues Oliver Carter, who's a reader in creative economies, and Sian Vaughan, who's a reader in research practice. So we're going to talk about the PGR Studio, which is the doctoral training provision and community at the Faculty of Arts, Design and Media at Birmingham City University, BCU. And in this paper, we're going to analyse how it's evolved and critically reflect on the challenges and sometimes necessary tensions in maintaining a disruptive approach to doctoral community and building an open, diverse and supportive research culture for our PGRs. So 7 years ago, a university research structure brought together the art and design schools alongside music, media and English, leading to the creation of the larger arts, design and media faculty. And as academics, we'd all completed our PhDs at Birmingham City University, and were aware of this need for a stronger sense of community amongst PGRs, something long acknowledged in literature. So with these increasing PGR numbers across a range of disciplines, research practice approaches, and more established research methodologies in a newly built faculty, we took the opportunity to work collaboratively to develop provision for PGR training, and in doing so, aiming to build what we're calling a disruptive community. In the context of our disciplines and institution, we wanted to challenge assumptions and open up spaces for difference whilst building community. Our initial aims were fairly conventional, but these secured us senior leadership buy-in. And this activity needed a strong brand identity, particularly as our PGRs were spread quite disparately across a range of different sites across the city centre, making it really quite difficult to establish a physical sense of community and belonging. So the term studio suggests this experimental, creative and practice-based space that resonates across all the schools and disciplines in the arts, design and media faculty. So it could be an art studio, design studio, recording studio, rehearsal studio or writing studio, for instance. And studio also suggests this idea of a work in progress rather than something being fixed. So we saw the PGR Studio as an opportunity for the professional development of our PGRs and trialled a co-designed bottom-up and interdisciplinary approach to establish a community and enhance our research and development provision. And we produced a modest budget, which included at its core student academic partners, who we also saw as co-leaders of the PGR Studio. So our provision and our community quickly grew from the first year, where we've run a mix of more conventional and experimental activities. One of our first events, for example, was a participatory workshop with a spoken word artist on storytelling research, for example. And over the 7 years, we've run a diverse and perhaps sometimes eclectic mix of activities. And in addition, the work of the PGR Studio has been shared in key sector conferences, journals, book chapters, which have also been co-authored with our PGRs. So our philosophy is developed to facilitate a creative, critical, collaborative and practice-based space, one that nurtures a safe, supportive and generative environment for new thinking and the cross-fertilisation of new ideas through innovative professional and career developments, where we explicitly embrace difference, diversity, and this notion of disruption.
As part of this exercise, it's allowed us to reflect on some of the maybe necessary tensions that have been involved in the way that crucially underpin the PGR Studio, each of which have shifted throughout its evolution, and which we argue require continued attention to navigate their complexities and tensions, particularly within the context of our institution. So in terms of partnerships, co-working with PGRs enables them to proactively shape their experience and their environment from the ground up. And by having a changing cast of PGR partners, it's enabled the PGR Studio and its activities to continually be refreshed and be redeveloped and sometimes disrupted from a multitude of perspectives. New faces bring new ideas, but it's been important to be reflexive and ensure some necessary beneficial activities don't start to get forgotten or feel tired. However, not all of PGR partners have been fully committed or shared the same understanding of co-creation or community. With others, we've had to manage their expectations of the potential for disruption within a HCI context. Furthermore, the level of funding for our PGR partners has become highly inconsistent. And as the years have gone by, we've become more distanced from the doctoral experience ourselves, meaning that the original near-peer relationships have become in danger of being perceived as more hierarchical. In terms of balancing difference, the PGR Studio sought to establish a breadth of the community and depth of engagement, embracing the idea that a studio has the capacity to enable creative thinking, innovation, and metacognition, or thinking about thinking, to quote Hargrove. We've intentionally given a high profile to practice research in art, design, media, creative writing, music, performance, etc., to try and combat practice researchers' feelings of illegitimacy, which has been a constant feature of PGR feedback, supervisor gripes, and one of the initial tensions when the new faculty was established. This has been seen as disadvantaging and alienating by some PGRs who ironically are doing more traditional theoretical, historical, or empirical research projects. Our approach has been emphasised, as you can see on the badges that Jacqueline had made. This is all research. And the PGR Studio has become highly valued by those who do participate. In some years, penetration into our PhD cohort was more limited. Finally, when thinking about positionality of the PGR Studio, there is an inherent tension in holding open, experimental and disruptive spaces within a post-1992 HEI. The PGR Studio has felt alienated from the structures of the institution, and at times it's been difficult to communicate its activities, but it is increasingly becoming acknowledged as part of the PGR experience. Familiarising and engaging supervisors with our activities has been a constant challenge, and conversely, at times it has been perceived as having little openness for supervisors or PGR leads to input ideas for activities. There are also constant institutional difficulties around justifying budget for something, little understood at faculty executive level or perceived as an extracurricular indulgence in comparison with the undergraduate student experience. Trying to explain that the studio isn't actually a physical space but a metaphorical space has become recently a surprising challenge. So very quickly, one of the things that we also became aware of is how disruption can create opportunity. So despite the challenges of a sudden pivot online in relation to this little global pandemic you may have heard of, it provided significant opportunities for us. We immediately realized at the beginning of the pandemic that our PGRs needed community more than ever, and they embraced the online possibilities beyond our own expectations. We've realized that there's different forms of engagement online. So there's been more organic PGR self-led spaces and support enabled by online platforms such as Teams, and a stronger sense of community through the possibilities of an asynchronous, almost 24/7 participation, particularly across our international cohort. Increased accessibility for recording sessions, as well as enabling those who live at distance from campus, have part-time jobs or caring responsibilities, has allowed them to participate more easily. In a time where we've been facing increasing resource threats, it is more cost effective and efficient to do things online. And it also enables us to collaborate more with other central services. There's been a greater generosity, I think. The downside has been a more passive approach to participation, of just turning up. We suspect sometimes people have cameras off, and there's a general lack of messiness or the playfulness and the buzz that we have when we were meeting face to face. So just hand over to Sian to give some conclusions.
Thinking through this exercise of reflection has been really useful to us, and it's made us realise that, particularly in our context, institutionally and in terms of our disciplines, that our doctoral education needs to be fluid, it needs to be open to change. It's kind of remarkable to think that this didn't exist 7 years ago, that there was a time without PGR Studio, and how little support other than supervision our PGRs used to get. So we've achieved something. There is community. Our model of collaborative, peer-to-peer, near-peer community and professional development is spreading across the institution, particularly for academic staff. It's visible both in the increase of development activities that are advertised, but also the nature of those activities. We're all academic supervisors ourselves, and we're seeing academics involved in co-creation of other research development activities for other academics. Despite these achievements, the sustainability of PGR Studio remains an issue. We're in a post-92 institution. It's dominated by undergrad provision. And PGR Studio has constantly had to disrupt attitudes, systems, processes, and a pervading, growing neoliberal logic. And to try and retain this space for co-creation for disruptive PGR-led activity has been really quite difficult at times. And we want it to be authentic and meaningful for our PGRs. So it's difficult, but it's worth doing, I suppose we'd say. Thinking forwards to the future, after 7 years, we're finding ourselves again returning to this notion of disruption. And it was interesting to hear earlier in the conference, someone claimed that disruption is the professional heritage of research development. It's definitely something that, you know, we're taking quite seriously and thinking about. And again, we're having to argue for investment in our PGRs as partners to co-design and co-create PGR Studio to build this bottom-up research culture. Our doctoral community is established, but it needs nurturing, particularly as it's through its constant flux and renewal of membership. Some of the customs and assumptions we wanted to disrupt at the start are arguably less prevalent. Some remain very entrenched. So our current thinking is around these 3 areas. How do we sustain this activity without becoming too institutionalized? How can we harness the tensions we've identified? And overall, how much disruption is actually productive? And we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.